Before the city has a name tonight, before the street below has found its voice, the room on the third floor of Orchard Street is already moving. Dim whatever light you have near you. We are going in. The room does not wait for morning. It begins the way a factory begins a shift. Without ceremony, without warmth, without asking whether anyone is ready, 6 people are breathing in this space. You can hear them if you stay still long enough. A slow exhale from somewhere near the window. The shallow breath of a child tucked against a wall. Behind a curtain, stretched across the back corner of the front room. An older man turning in his sleep. The room smells of all of them at once. Wool left slightly damp. Tallow from a candle burned down hours ago. Ash in a stove that went cold after midnight. And underneath all of that, something warmer and harder to name. The smell of people who have been in the same rooms for a long time. Rosa Adler wakes before any of it changes. She does not lie there listening. She sits up. Her feet find the floor. The floor is cold. Not dramatic cold. The cold of old wood over a building that was never designed to be warm. Patient cold that has been waiting all night in the floorboards and now accepts her weight without complaint. She does not light the lamp yet. She knows this room well enough to move through it in the dark. 3 steps left to the stove, 2 steps back to the table. 1 step right, and her hip finds the corner of the bed frame, which she stopped doing 8 months ago. She learned it the way you learn everything in a space this size, by making the mistake enough times that your body simply stops. The stove is cold. She opens it, lifts out last night's ash with a small iron scoop, and checks underneath. There is a piece of coal the size of a walnut that held just enough heat through the night to be worth something. She feeds it carefully. A twist of newspaper. 2 thin sticks she split 2 days ago and kept dry near the stove's side. Then a piece of coal, placed with the patience of someone who knows that rushing this costs more than time. She waits. The fire takes. Rosa breathes out through her nose. Not quite relief. Not quite satisfaction. Somewhere between the two. Now she lights the lamp. The room comes forward in the low orange light. And the first thing you notice is how small it is. Not the small of a cozy photograph. The small of a space that was built to hold as many rent-paying people as possible, and that achieves this with a precision that leaves no room for anything extra. The front room runs perhaps 14 feet from door to back wall, 11 feet wide. In that space, there is a table, 2 stools, the stove, a shelf with a tin cup and a ceramic bowl with a chip on its rim, a wooden peg holding 2 coats and a scarf, a rope strung near the ceiling, from which hang 2 pieces of clothing still slightly damp from yesterday. And behind that curtain in the back corner, the sleeping space of a man named Weiss, who pays $2 a month for that corner and the right to exist in this family's life without being fully part of it. Through a doorway with no door. The middle room. No window of its own. An opening in one wall that looks into a shaft between this building and the one beside it, perhaps 3 feet wide, running 6 floors down to packed dirt. The shaft was put there because a city law said every room must have access to air. This is air in the way that a locked door is an exit. Technically, not in any other way. The middle room is where the family sleeps. Isaac and Rosa in the bed. Miriam and Leah on a mattress on the floor beside it. Samuel near the doorway on a folded quilt worn smooth from use. Beyond that, the kitchen, the smallest room and the most important one, the stove. A board on two sawhorses for a counter. A bucket near the far wall. This is where the heat is. When there is heat, this is where the day starts and where it ends. 3 rooms, 6 people. A curtain where a door should be. Rosa sets the small pot on the stove and measures water into it from the bucket. The bucket is low. Miriam will need to go down when she wakes. The day has already made its first demand before the sky outside has decided what color it is going to be. She works without noise, not because anyone asked her to, because this is what you do when 6 people are sleeping 4 feet from where you are standing. You move like you are borrowing the air. You place things down instead of setting them down. You learn to pour water without the sound of water. In the middle room, Isaac begins to wake. Not from sound. His breathing changes. A slight shift in rhythm. And then the held breath of a man whose eyes have opened in the dark and whose mind has already started the same arithmetic it runs every morning. How much yesterday? How much today? Whether the shop will have a full day's work or one of those days where the work comes slow and the walk home feels longer than 12 minutes. He sits up, reaches for his shirt in the dark. He laid it over the footboard the night before. He has done this for 4 years. His hands find it without looking. Rosa hears him. She does not turn around. He comes to the kitchen doorway and stands there in the lamplight. 38 years old. And in this light, at this hour, he looks like a man who has been carrying something heavy long enough that he no longer remembers what it felt like not to. His hands hang at his sides. He is present in the way that is different from rested. Rosa ladles hot water into the tin cup. She holds it out without speaking. He takes it. Their fingers touch on the side of the cup and neither of them mentions it. He drinks, sets the cup down, puts on his coat and his hat, checks the pocket for the cloth holding his lunch. 2 pieces of bread and half an onion Rosa packed last night. He picks up his cap from the peg. He pauses. His hand comes to rest on Rosa's shoulder. Not a squeeze. Not dramatic. The weight of a hand that knows the shoulder it is resting on, and means to say something with that knowing. Then his footsteps on the staircase. She counts them without meaning to. 12 steps to the 2nd floor landing, 12 more to the 1st. The heavy door at the bottom with the latch that sticks, the sound of it closing. Rosa turns back to the stove. Through the front window, the sky over the buildings across Orchard Street is beginning, very slowly, to show the idea of gray. A cart below. A voice. The city does not sleep the way people sleep. It shifts weight, and then, before you have quite decided, it has happened. It is awake. Rosa stirs the pot. In the middle room, one of the children turns. Mr. Weiss coughs once behind his curtain, short and dry, and then is quiet. The room is working. It has been working all along. There is a word that gets used for places like this one, and the word is home. It is not the wrong word, but it needs some work. When you say home, and mean a place where you rest, where the kitchen does not share a wall with the bedroom, where the children have a corner that belongs to them, then what you are picturing is not this apartment on Orchard Street. When you say home and mean the place where life happens, all of it, the sleeping and the cooking and the working and the loving and the getting sick and the trying to hold it together, all in the same air, often in the same 8 square feet, then this apartment is exactly what you mean. These 3 rooms do not separate life into its parts. They hold all of it at once. The front room is where you come in. A door, real wood, with a latch that works most of the time, and a gap at the bottom where winter finds its way like something that paid the rent and believes it has a right to be here. To the left, the table. 4 people can sit at it if 2 of them are children, and none of them need much room for their elbows. The surface is marked from years of use. A dark ring where a hot pot was set down without thinking. A groove along one edge where a knife went slightly too far. A patch near the corner that is lighter than the rest because Rosa scrubs that corner hardest. This table will be a different thing 4 times before tonight. Breakfast table in the morning. Work table, where Rosa sews through the middle of the day. The lamp pulled close. The pieces of fabric laid out in whatever order makes the work go fastest. Dinner table when Isaac comes home. And late, after the children are asleep. The place where Rosa sits with a cup of tea, and the quiet that is as close to privacy as this apartment ever gets. 4 use. 1 piece of furniture. This is how a room like this works. Near the table, the 2 stools. On the wall, the peg with the coats. Near the window, the small stool where Miriam reads when the light is good enough, which is not often. The window looks out onto Orchard Street, and the light that comes through it in the morning is the best light in the apartment. This is why Rosa chose this room for the sewing. In a space where every resource is counted. Good morning. Light is the kind of resource you do not waste. At the back of the front room, the curtain. Behind it, Mr. Vice corner. A narrow mattress. A wooden crate he uses as a shelf. Holding a candle. A small book in German. A pocket watch he winds every evening before he sleeps. He has been in this building longer than the Adler family. He knows which step on the staircase will wake the family below if you step on the left side. He knows the landlord's agent comes on the first Monday of the month. He knows that the building's water tap runs cleaner in the early morning before the other tenants have been at it. He is not a difficult man. He is a solitary man, which is a different thing, and there is something in the particular quiet of a solitary man living 4 feet from a family of 5 that takes up its own kind of space. Every important conversation in the front room is a conversation he could hear if he chose to. Rosa and Isaac have learned to say the things that matter in other ways. A look across the table, a word in the kitchen when Mr. Weiss has gone out. The curtain provides privacy in the way the shaft provides air. In principle, less so in practice. $2 a month. Mr. Weiss pay. Without those $2, the rent arithmetic for the Adler family does not work. This is what the curtain represents, and everyone in the apartment understands it without saying so. Through the doorway into the middle room, no door in this doorway. There was supposed to be one, or there will be one someday. depending on who you ask and how the week has been. For now, there is the space where a door would go. The middle room is dark. The opening to the air shaft lets in something, but calling it light would be generous. Even at midday in August, this room lives in permanent late afternoon. In winter, it is closer to night. This is the room where the family sleeps, and the dark does not resist that purpose. The bed takes up most of the floor. Isaac and Rosa have slept in it for 4 years. It does not feel large, because the room is small enough that the bed reaching from wall to near wall reads not as generous, but as tight. As if the bed grew into the space, and the space accommodated it the way a body accommodates something it cannot remove. On the floor beside the bed, the mattress where Miriam and Leah sleep. Miriam is 13 and Leah is 4, and they sleep together in the way children who have always shared space sleep, without awareness that there is any other arrangement, each adjusting to the other's movements without waking. Near the doorway, Samuel's quilt. He is 9, and he sleeps closest to the front of the apartment because he is the one most likely to need to get somewhere fast. This is the kind of logic that develops in a space where everything has a reason, and most of the reasons are about function. The air shaft opening in the far wall is about the size of a large book laid flat. In theory, ventilation. In practice, on a still summer day, the smell of everything below it, the years of refuse at the bottom, the contributions of every floor above, air that has nowhere useful to go. On a cold day in winter, a draft that finds the back of your neck in the dark and does not leave until morning. Rosa keeps it covered with a piece of heavy cloth. The cloth reduces the smell and increases the stuffiness. She chooses based on the day. Some days, cold wins. Some days, smell does. Neither option is good. She picks the less bad one and moves on. Through the second doorway, the kitchen, the stove takes up the corner to your right. Coal-burning, iron-bodied, stubborn in cold weather. Rosa has been cooking on it for 4 years and has not entirely won the negotiation. The rear left burner runs slightly hotter than the others. The oven door needs to be propped slightly open, or the bread comes out wrong on the bottom. She knows these things, the way she knows the floor plan in the dark, completely, in her body rather than her mind. Beside the stove, the board on sawhorses that serves as a counter, on it, a ceramic bowl, a knife, a wooden spoon, worn smooth from years of use. Under it, a crate holding the week's food, a paper packet of cornmeal, several potatoes, a wrapped piece of salt herring, a heel of dark bread in a cloth. This is not poverty in the sense of having nothing. This is poverty in the sense of having exactly what is needed and not more. Of knowing at any given moment precisely how many days are covered by what is in that crate and what the number would be if something went wrong. The bucket near the far wall holds water, down to the last third this morning. Everything in these 3 rooms has a purpose. Nothing is decorative except in the way that everything is slightly decorative. Because Rosa believes that order is a form of dignity. She cannot make the apartment larger. She cannot make the windows real, or the shaft into something that provides actual air, or the curtain into a proper door. What she can do is keep the rooms. What she can do is make them work. And they do work. The reformers who came later with their notebooks and their genuine sympathy sometimes missed this. These rooms were not simply where hardship happened. They were a precision instrument for surviving it. Every inch had been thought about. Every object was in its place for a reason. The family here had figured out how to make 3 rooms do the work of 10. Not through deprivation of imagination, but through the application of it. By the time Miriam wakes, the oatmeal is ready. Rosa calls her name once. Softly, Miriam comes through the doorway, her hair loose, her eyes carrying the particular look of someone who would have liked another hour and has accepted that this is not going to happen. She sits at the table. Rosa sets a bowl in front of her. In English, Rosa says. She says it in German. Miriam answers in English. Good morning. Good morning, Rosa says. In English this time. This exchange happens every morning. It will happen again tomorrow. It is the smallest possible lesson, given in the smallest possible moment, in a kitchen the size of a large closet, before the city outside has fully committed to being awake. But Miriam is learning, and Samuel is learning faster, and Leah will learn faster still. The apartment receives this the way it receives everything, without comment, without ceremony. The morning is already underway, and there is too much of it ahead for anyone to stop and mark the moment. Monday comes the way it always comes in this apartment, before anyone is ready for it, without apology. Rosa knows what day it is before she opens her eyes, not from any sound or any particular quality of light, but because her body has learned the shape of the week the same way it learned the shape of the apartment. Sunday carries a different weight, a partial stillness, a few hours when the sewing can be set aside. And then Monday arrives, and the weight returns, and the weight on this Monday has a name: rent. The number is $10.50 for the month. Rosa did not arrive at this number. It was given to her the way the size of the apartment was given to her, the way the broken latch on the kitchen window was given to her. You do not negotiate with a number like this when you are standing in a hallway in the fall of 1878 with 2 children and a husband who has been in the city for 11 months and a 3rd child on the way. You look at the number and you look at the apartment, and you understand that these 2 facts happen to align, and so you take it. $10.50 per month. Everything else arranges itself around this number. Isaac earns, on a good week, between $6 and $7 at the contract shop on Delancey Street. On a week when work runs short, which happens more than the good weeks suggest it should, he earns less. $4, $3.50. Once, in February of last year, $2.80 for a week of 5 days. Rosa sat at the table that night, after the children were asleep, and did the arithmetic 3 times, because the first 2 answers were the same, and she needed the 3rd to confirm it. Mr. Weiss pays $2 on the 1st of the month. He is a man of habit, and his habit is to pay. There have been 2 months in 3 years when he was late, and both times he knocked on the curtain on the 2nd morning and handed Rosa the money without explanation, and she took it without asking for one. So the rent is covered by Isaac's earnings and Mr. Weiss's contribution together. Only when the week has been good. And the week is not always good. What remains after rent feeds the family. buys the coal, pays for the needles Rosa goes through faster than she would like, and covers the emergencies that arrive without asking. What remains is an amount that requires management, the way a long journey requires navigation. Constantly, without margin, with the clear understanding that a wrong turn does not cost inconvenience but something real. Rosa manages it. The agent comes at 10 in the morning. His name is Farrell, and he is not a cruel man, which does not mean he is a kind one. He is a man with a leather-covered book and a list of numbers and a job that requires him to collect what is owed and note what is not. He wears a coat better than any coat in this apartment, and he smells of pipe tobacco, and he knocks on each door with the same 3 knocks. Businesslike, not unfriendly. The knock of a man who expects to be admitted. Rosa has the money ready before he knocks. She counted it Sunday evening on the kitchen table. The coins and bills laid flat in an order that makes them easy to count again. She always counts again before handing them over. Not from doubt, from the same instinct that makes her check the food crate before bed, even when she already knows what is in it. Maintenant, Farrell counts the money without looking at her directly. He writes in his book, "Thank you, Mrs. Adler." "Yes," she says. He goes to the next door. Rosa stands in the kitchen for a moment, looking at the space on the table where the money was. This is the moment, every month, when something moves through her that is not quite relief and not quite grief, but holds pieces of both. The rent is paid. The apartment is theirs for another 30 days. Isaac can go to work this week without the specific weight of that number pressing on every hour he spends at the pressing iron. This is not a small thing. In the buildings around Orchard Street, the distance between a family that is managing and a family that is not is sometimes exactly 1 missed payment. And everyone who lives here knows it. She puts the kettle on and goes back to work. What Farrell's visit represents, beyond the money, is harder to name but easy to feel. The man who owns this building has never stood in this kitchen. He has never seen the broken window latch or the smell that comes up through the air shaft in July or the step on the second-floor landing that has been loose for 8 months. He knows the building through its numbers, what it earned, what it costs him, what he can raise, what the market will hold. He does not need to stand in this kitchen to be in it. He is in the dimensions of the apartment, designed to hold as many rent-paying people as possible. He is in the windows, sized to meet the minimum the law requires. He is in the staircase, narrow because a staircase only needs to be wide enough for a person carrying something. He is in the broken latch and the loose step and the shaft. He is in every decision Rosa makes about the food crate, because every decision she makes about the food crate is a decision shaped by what is left after his number is met. Rosa does not spend time on bitterness about this. Bitterness costs something. She is not in a position to spend freely. She spends where it matters. Coal, food, the 2 cents per piece that add up to something usable if she works quickly enough. But she knows the way you know the gap at the bottom of the door. Not because you think about it, because you feel the cold every morning. Miriam comes home from school at 2:30 and drops her reader on the table, and Rosa hands her a piece of bread, and Miriam eats it standing because she is hungry enough that sitting feels like delay. Miriam is 13. She is quick and careful. She has her father's patience with difficult things and something of her own that Rosa is still learning to name. a quality of attention, a way of noticing what is happening in a room without appearing to watch. She does well at school. Her teacher sent a note home in October saying so. Rosa read it twice and folded it and put it in the crate where the important papers live. Underneath the letter from her sister in Hamburg that arrived in September and that Rosa has started answering 3 times and not finished. Samuel comes home an hour later. He comes the way Samuel always comes in, with more sound than strictly necessary, dropping his jacket, asking what is for supper before he has fully closed the door. Put your jacket on the peg, Rosa says. He puts his jacket on the peg. Good afternoon, Rosa says. Good afternoon, Samuel says. In English, without thinking, which is the point. He is 9, and he already speaks English better than Isaac does. He corrects his father sometimes, gently, the way a child corrects someone he loves, just handing the right word across like something dropped. Isaac takes it, repeats the word correctly, and says nothing else. Later. Rosa has heard him in the kitchen alone, saying the word quietly to himself, practicing in the dark. She has not told Samuel this. Some things in this apartment stay with the person they belong to. Leah is at Rosa's feet. She has been there most of the day, rolling her 2 wooden spools across the floor and retrieving them with the focused satisfaction of a child who has not yet been told there should be more options. She looks up when Samuel comes in and says his name like it is 2 full syllables of welcome. And Samuel picks her up and swings her once before setting her down because he is 9 and she is 4. And this is the economy of affection in a family that does not have the space to be sentimental too often. The afternoon moves. Rosa saves. Miriam does her schoolwork and then sews beside her. Samuel does something near the window with a piece of string. Leah sleeps an hour and wakes asking for water. By 5, the light from the front window has shifted from afternoon to the gray that comes before dark in November. Rosa has put down the sewing and started supper. Potatoes and the piece of herring and the last of this morning's bread cut thin so it goes around. The rent has been paid. The week has started. The apartment on the 3rd floor does what it does every Monday after Farrell takes his book and leaves, which is close the door and continue. Isaac comes home at 8:45. Rosa hears his footsteps on the staircase and knows them from every other footstep. She has not been waiting. She has been working, but she has been listening. He comes in, hangs his coat, sits at the table. Rosa brings his supper without being asked. He eats the way a man eats after 14 hours of pressing hot iron against fabric. Not hungry exactly. Emptied. Needing to be filled the way the coal bucket needs filling. He finishes what is in front of him. Rosa sits across from him. She pours water into his cup. How was today? She says. Full day, he says. She nods. They sit for a few minutes. Not quite conversation, but not silence either. The shared occupancy of a quiet moment by 2 people who have spent the entire day surrounded by demands. Leah asleep in the middle room. Samuel and Miriam asleep. Mr. Weiss behind his curtains since 9. The lamp is low. The stove has burned down to coals. Tomorrow the rent will not be due again for another month. Tonight the apartment holds what it always holds, which is more than it was designed to hold and exactly enough to keep this family inside it. Rosa reaches across the table and pinches the lamp. the room goes dark. Somebody in City Hall in 1879 decided that the poor deserved air. This was a good intention. The men who pushed for the new tenement law had walked through buildings in this neighborhood and seen what happened when you packed 40 families into a structure with no ventilation, when rooms had no connection to the outside, when summer turned every floor into something the people on it simply had to endure. They had seen children sick with things that moved easily through airless, crowded spaces. They had smelled what accumulated when air did not move. They wanted to fix it. So the law said every room in a tenement apartment had to have a window onto outside air. The builders solved this problem the way problems get solved when the people doing the solving do not have to live with the solution. They cut a gap between buildings, 3 feet across, sometimes less, running from the ground to the roof, 6 floors, with windows from the interior rooms on both sides opening into it. This gap was called an air shaft. It satisfied the law, which said windows must open onto air, because the shaft was technically air. It satisfied no one who actually lived next to one, but that dissatisfaction was not the kind that gets recorded in planning documents. Samuel found the shaft the week the family moved in. He was 6 years old, and he did what 6-year-old boys do with openings in walls. He pressed his face to it and looked down. He did not look for very long. The shaft in this building dropped 60 feet to the ground. At the bottom, packed earth and the accumulation of years of things dropped or thrown or simply let fall from 6 floors of families. No light reaches the bottom. The walls on either side are brick, blackened near the upper floors, where heat from the flues rises. Damp further down, where moisture collects with nowhere to go. On a cold morning in November, the shaft pulls air through the cloth covering and delivers it into the middle room at a temperature that makes the word ventilation feel like a small cruelty. On a hot morning in August, it gathers the heat from all 6 floors and releases it upward in a column that carries with it the cooking and the washing and the breathing of everyone in the building. When a family 3 floors below burns their supper, you know it in the middle room before the smell clears from their kitchen. When someone above does their laundry, the soap smell arrives through the cloth. Once, last spring, something died at the bottom of the shaft, and for 2 weeks, the middle room held the fact of that death in the air, until whatever had died finished the process, and the shaft moved on to other things. Rosa keeps the opening covered with heavy cloth. Most of the time, on a November morning, she pulls it aside to let in something, anything, and what comes through is cold and carries the smell of 7 other families, all in the same position as hers. She stands for a moment, with the cloth in her hand and the shaft air moving past her face. Then she puts the cloth back, or leaves it off, if the cold seems worth it for the air. The choice between the two is one she makes without ceremony, because there is no good option, and dwelling on that fact costs more than she has to spend. Here is what the men who wrote the law did not account for. An air shaft, 3 feet wide, running 60 feet from ground to roof, is not just a ventilation problem. In a fire, it is something else entirely. Air moves through it. The shaft connects every floor. A fire that finds the shaft finds a column of moving air and a channel running the full height of the building with openings into every interior room on every floor. The design meant to bring air to the poor, also built into every building that adopted it. A path for fire to travel faster than anyone on the upper floors could get to the stairs. The reformers who came later would point this out. The observation would produce more laws. The laws would produce better buildings. But not yet. Not in 1880. In 1880, the shaft is the shaft, and the cloth is the cloth, and the middle room gets what the shaft decides to give it. Leah sleeps in the middle room every night 4 feet from the shaft opening. Rosa knows this, the way she knows everything about this apartment that cannot be changed. Not as a problem waiting to be solved, but as a condition to be navigated. A fact of this specific life that sits in the back of her mind and does not announce itself and does not go away. Isaac knows it too. He has not said much about the shaft in 4 years. There was a conversation early on when he spoke to Farrell about the smell in summer, about the cold in winter, about whether something could be done. Farrell listened with the expression of a man whose job is to listen and not to act. He said he would pass the concern along. Nothing changed. Isaac did not raise it again. Not because the shaft improved, because the calculation he ran told him that raising it again would cost something in effort and produce nothing in return. You do not spend where there is no return. On a still night in July, when the cloth is off, because the heat inside the middle room has become the worst problem. Rosa can hear the shaft breathing, a low movement of air between 2 walls of brick that goes on all night, indifferent and patient. The sound of a building doing exactly what it was built to do, which was to satisfy a law and house as many people as possible and leave the rest to the people inside. She puts the cloth back in the morning. She goes to the kitchen and starts the fire. Leah wakes in the middle room and calls for her mother. And the day begins, as it always begins, with the apartment providing what it provides and the family working around the rest, which is the only arrangement available, and the one they have made work, one morning at a time. Miriam leaves the apartment at 6:15 in the morning with 2 buckets. She does not take them because anyone told her to take them this specific morning. She takes them because it is morning and the buckets need filling, and she is the one who does it. The same way she is the one who washes the supper dishes and sweeps the kitchen floor on Saturdays and reads to Leah when Rosa's eyes are too tired from the sewing. These things are not assigned. They are known. They exist in the household the way gravity exists, not as rules, but as conditions. The buckets are wooden with metal handles. When they are full, they weigh close to 15 pounds each. Miriam has been carrying them since she was 10, and her arms have learned the weight to the way arms learn. Things they do repeatedly, with effort that no longer surprises them. The staircase is dark. No window. 1 lamp at the ground floor landing that burns from dusk to perhaps 10 in the evening. At 6:15 in November, it is dark enough that Miriam goes by feel and memory, her right hand trailing the wall, her feet knowing each stair the way they know it, which step is wide enough for her whole foot and which one runs short, which landing tilts slightly from the building settling over years. The 4th step from the top has a sound, not a creak exactly, more of a dull thud under the left side. like the board beneath is loose enough to flex. Miriam steps over the left side every time. Her body does it. She does not think about it. 2 floors down. 1 floor down. The landing. Through a door into the rear yard. The yard is roughly 20 feet across, shared by this building and the building behind it. Which means, on any given morning, there are people from 2 buildings using the same space. The tap is here. The outhouse is here. The air is coldest here, because the buildings on all 4 sides block the sun until past noon. At 6:15, there are already 2 women at the tap. Miriam knows one of them. Mrs. Brennan from the 4th floor nods and moves left to make room. The other woman Miriam does not know by name but knows by sight. Thin, red hands. Always here, early. Works with a speed that says she has been doing this longer than Miriam has. The tap runs cold. Cold enough this morning that the metal handle is painful to hold with bare skin. Miriam pulls her sleeve over her palm. The water comes out in a thin stream that fills the bucket slowly. She waits. Mrs. Brennan finishes and goes. The thin woman fills her second bucket and leaves. Miriam fills the first. While it fills, she looks at the yard. The outhouse against the far wall serves both buildings. The ground is packed dirt scattered with ash from emptied stoves. A clothesline strung between 2 rusted hooks. Empty now. Against one wall. A heap of ash and refuse that should have been cleared weeks ago and has not been cleared and has been added to by enough people over enough time that clearing it now would require someone with authority to make a decision. And that person has not made it. In summer, this yard smells of the outhouse and the refuse and the particular density of many lives compressed into a small outdoor space. In November, it smells of cold and ash and the faint metal edge of the water. It is not a pleasant yard, but it is outside. And outside in this building is limited enough that Miriam does not entirely take it for granted, even when she is standing in it at 6:15 with 1 bucket filling and 1 empty, and her hands already stiff. First bucket full. She sets it carefully aside and fills the second, 30 pounds together. Miriam weighs perhaps 90 pounds on a good week. She lifts both handles, adjusts the weight across her arms, goes back through the rear door. The first flight is the hardest because the turn from the ground floor hallway onto the stairs requires a precise adjustment to keep the buckets from striking the wall. She has the adjustment memorized. First flight, the water shifts. She slows, steadies, landing. Second flight. Here is where the handles press into her palms in the way that is not quite pain but is the thing that comes before pain. A steady pressure that is easier to carry when she is moving. She does not stop. The 4th step from the top and she angles right without deciding to. Second floor landing. Third flight. Steeper here than the first 2. The ceiling at the 3rd floor, landing lower than you expect, and Miriam ducks slightly coming around the turn. She always does. Automatically now. 3rd floor. She sets the buckets outside the apartment door, opens the latch, carries them in, sets them near the stove. Rosa is there. She looks at the buckets and then at Miriam's hands. Red from the cold and the metal handles. She takes Miriam's hands between both of hers for a moment, warmth passing from one pair of hands to another. Then she lets go and goes back to the stove. No speech. No thank you in the formal sense. Just the hands just the warmth. Just a moment before the morning moves on, Miriam puts on her coat for school. The 2 full buckets will last until midday, if Rosa is careful. She is always careful. By midday, Miriam will go down again, or Samuel will carry 1 bucket if she is not back yet. By evening, both buckets need filling again, and Miriam will take them down. The second run of the day. Same stairs, same tap, same cold handles. 4 trips a day on most days. More when Leah is sick and water goes faster. More on washing days. 1,000 trips a year. More. The stairs, the handle, the tap, the yard, the return. There is a building 2 blocks east where the tap was moved inside last year, into the ground floor hallway, out of the cold yard. Miriam heard about this from a girl at school whose family lives there. She thought about it for the rest of that afternoon, about what it would mean to fill the buckets without going outside in November. About 10 seconds of warmth she does not have, and that girl does. She did not mention it to Rosa. Not because Rosa would not understand, because Rosa would understand too well, and there is a kind of understanding that is harder to sit with than not knowing. The buckets stand near the stove. Everything the family uses today, every cup of tea and bowl of soup and wet cloth for Leah's face when she is feverish. Every bit of it came up 3 flights of stairs in the dark in someone's hands. The walls do not weigh 15 pounds. Samuel has a map of this building in his head, and it is more detailed than any map he has of anywhere else. He knows the building the way you know, a place when you have spent the majority of your 9 years inside it, or immediately next to it. Completely, specifically, with the granular knowledge that comes from paying attention when there is not much else to pay attention to. He knows which door on the 2nd floor sticks in wet weather. He knows the family at the end of the 3rd floor hallway has a dog that is not supposed to be here and that lives under their bed and can be heard on quiet evenings. He knows that Mrs. Goldstein on the 2nd floor props her door open when she is cooking something she is proud of and closes it when she is not. He knows the hallway the way he knows his own hands. The hallway on the 3rd floor runs the length of the building, 50 feet from the staircase at one end to a window at the other. The window looks into another shaft, narrower than the one in the middle room, and provides enough light to confirm that the hallway exists, but not enough to see by. A small oil lamp at the staircase end burns from dusk until maybe 10 in the evening. Beyond its circle, the hallway manages on its own. The floor is old wood, dark, with a quality underfoot that changes between the center boards, solid and quiet, and the boards near the walls, which give slightly and speak in a low tone when you step on them. Samuel knows which boards give and which do not. He can walk this hallway in the dark without making a sound. He has tested this on several occasions and considers it a reliable skill. There are 4 apartments on the 3rd floor. The Adler's front left, the Rosenberg's front right, the Schultz family rear left, and in the rear right, a couple from Poland who arrived in September and whose 2 small children play in the hallway in the afternoons with a rubber ball against the wall. Rhythmic and patient. The hallway is where the building's interior life happens in public. In every apartment, on every floor, the rooms are full. There is no extra room set aside for nothing. No space that exists for the luxury of existing. When life produces more than the rooms can hold, it spills into the hallway, not dramatically, consistently, the way water finds whatever level it can find. Laundry goes into the hallway when the apartment is too wet for more laundry. Children go into the hallway when the apartment is too crowded for a child who needs to move. The kind of argument that requires more air than four walls can absorb sometimes sends one person into the hallway to breathe before returning. The hallway is where you go when you need to be out of your apartment, but not yet out of the building. A space between the privacy of your rooms and the full exposure of the street. It is also where information moves. This is something you understand when you live in a building like this one. News does not travel through formal channels here. It travels through the hallway. Someone passes someone else on the way to the tap. The Schultz boy tells Samuel something overheard from his father. Mrs. Rosenberg mentions something to Rosa on the staircase. A word said casually while passing, and by evening everyone on the floor knows it, and no one has had a direct conversation about it. The thin woman from downstairs, passing through one afternoon, mentioned that a family in a building on Mulberry Street was gone now. There had been a dispute about the rent. That was all she said. By supper, the third floor knew it. Samuel absorbs all of this. He understands about half of what he hears and files the rest for later, which is a reasonable approach for a 9-year-old navigating information that belongs to the adult world. The hallway smells of everything the apartments are producing at any given moment. Cooking and coal smoke and laundry, and the particular damp of a building where the air does not move as much as it should. In winter, the smells compress. In summer, they rise and deepen. You stop noticing after a while, not because the smells are gone, but because they become the wallpaper of the place. Samuel has never noticed them in any conscious way. Leah has never known anything different. What Samuel does notice are the sounds. The Rosenbergs argue, sometimes on Tuesday evenings. Not the kind of argument that makes you uncertain about safety. The kind two people have when they are both tired, and one of them made a decision the other disagrees with, and neither has the energy to finish it cleanly. The argument comes through their door into the hallway, and Samuel, if he is sitting near the wall, does not listen exactly. He hears it, and what he hears tells him something about what it is to be adults in a building like this, which is that being adults in a building like this is not a simple thing. The Polish couple in the rear right apartment sing to their children in the evenings. A slow song, repeating, in a language Samuel cannot follow, but whose sound he has memorized without meaning to. He finds it comforting in a way he would not say out loud. But on evenings, when the song is there, moving through the wall into the hallway, and sometimes through the hallway door into the front room where he is sitting, there is something in the evening that sits differently than evenings when the song is not there. On a Saturday afternoon in October, he sat in the hallway for nearly 2 hours doing nothing in particular. The Polish children played with their rubber ball. A woman he did not recognize came up the stairs with a bundle and knocked on the Schultz door and was let in. Mr. Rosenberg came out in his good coat, nodded at Samuel, went down. Mrs. Goldstein's door opened briefly, releasing the smell of something good, then closed again. This is the building, not the building in the rent ledger. The building as it is, a structure full of people managing their lives with what they have, spilling into each other's space a little. hearing each other through the wall, knowing each other by sound and smell and footstep on a staircase. Samuel went inside when Rosa called him. He went back into the apartment and closed the door, and the hallway was on the other side of it. But it was not empty. It is never empty, even when no one is in it. It holds the trace of everyone who has been, the smells and the sounds, and the particular way the floor speaks underfoot in this building on this street. All of it accumulated into a texture that belongs to the families here, the way nothing else in the building quite belongs to them. Not the walls, not the apartments, not the rent receipts. This, the hallway, the shared space, the street inside the building that never entirely sleeps. There is a way of thinking about food that Rosa learned before she learned to read. She learned it sitting in a kitchen in Hamburg, watching her mother move between the stove and the table, with the particular economy of a woman who knows exactly what she has and exactly what it needs to do. The lesson was not about cooking. It was about counting. Every family that lives the way her family lived eats according to a mathematics that has nothing to do with appetite and everything to do with what is in the crate and what the crate cost and how many days remain until the next wages come in. You do not eat until you are full in a household like this one. You eat until the meal is done, and the meal is sized to what the family needs to keep going. On a good week, the arithmetic works like this. Isaac brings home $6.20. $2 go toward the week's portion of the monthly rent. What remains is $4.20 for everything else. Coal and food and needles and the 35-cent reader that Samuel left on the stoop last month and that Rosa replaced without mentioning how she found the 35 cents. Add to that what Rosa earns from the piecework, which, on a normal week, comes to between 40 and 60 cents, depending on how many pieces she finishes before Friday pickup and how many times Leah requires her full attention. Call it $5 in a reasonable week. $5 for everything. Rosa buys food every 2 or 3 days rather than once a week. Not because she prefers the extra trips, because buying in small quantities means buying only what can be used before it turns. And storage in this apartment is a problem. There is no cold in summer, no cellar. No pantry beyond the crate. What you buy, you must use. So you buy close to the need and go back when the need returns, which adds trips to the week but removes spoilage from the calculation. The crate under the kitchen counter holds the week's provisions. 2 potatoes and a third going soft that needs to be used today. Half a packet of cornmeal. A piece of salt herring wrapped in cloth, a heel of rye bread, a small paper of tea, and 4 dried figs pushed to the back that Miriam does not know about, saved for the day when Miriam needs them, which Rosa will know when it arrives. This is what $5 a week provides. Exactly enough, which is different from abundance, in the way that staying dry in a light rain is different from not raining. Shopping happens on Hester Street. Hester Street in 1880 has decided to be a market, whether the city gave it permission or not. The pushcarts begin appearing before 7. Vendors, wheeling them into position with the efficiency of people who have their spots and their angles and their particular arrangements for drawing the attention of the people who walk by. By 8, the street is a negotiation in several languages conducted at moderate to high volume, buyers moving between carts, with the focused attention of people who know the prices and know the vendors, and know that 2 cents per pound at one cart is not the same as 2 cents per pound 20 feet down. Rosa moves through this market the way she moves through the apartment in the dark, by knowledge rather than by looking. She knows which vendor cuts the herring from the barrel honestly and which one angles his hand when he sets it on the scale. She knows which cart has the better potatoes this week because she looked on her way back from dropping off the Thursday collars. She knows that the bread from the woman near the corner of Orchard is 2 days old on Thursdays, but 1 day old on Mondays, and that the price does not change between those 2 days. Which means Monday is the correct day to buy bread from that cart. She shops with Leah on the days when Samuel is at school, and there is no one to watch the child. Leah rides on her hip with the comfortable passivity of a 4-year-old who has made this trip enough times that she no longer finds it requiring. Simply present, watching the street from her elevated position with mild curiosity. The vendors know Rosa by face and by the way she considers a purchase, the slight pause before she agrees to a price, the way she looks at the item, and then the vendor, and then the item again. She is not a difficult customer. She is a precise one. And most of the vendors on this street have more respect for precise customers than for easy ones, because a precise customer comes back and tells the people in her building which cart treated her correctly. Today she buys half a pound of salt herring, 2 potatoes, a small bag of dried beans, a piece of bone from the butcher's cart. Almost nothing in cost, but it will give the soup a depth that the beans alone cannot produce. A 1/4 pound of lard, a small cone of dark bread, 22 cents. She counts it from the small cloth purse inside her coat and hands the coins to the last vendor with the absence of ceremony that characterizes every financial transaction in a life where money is too specific to be casual about. On the way home, she passes the bakery on the corner, where the bread in the window is lighter than what she bought. Made from a flour that costs more. Shaped with a care that costs more. She walks past it the way she walks past buildings with steam heat, without stopping, because looking at the things you do not have for longer than a passing glance is a habit she cannot afford to develop. Back in the kitchen, the beans go to soak. The bone goes into the small pot. The bread and 1 potato she sets aside for lunch. The lard goes into the tin near the stove. Supper tonight will be bean soup with the bone and the 2nd potato cut into it. Bread, a small piece of herring. It is a meal that fills you without waste. The bone surrenders whatever it has into the water over 3 hours on the back of the stove. The beans soften. The potato adds body. Nobody at this table will call it exciting. Rosa has never once considered excitement a criterion for food. The criteria are whether it nourishes, whether it stretches, whether it costs what she has decided it can cost, and whether it can be produced on a coal stove in a room the size of a closet, while she is finishing the last of Thursday's collars and keeping Leah from the counter. The soup meets all of these. By 2 in the afternoon, the smell of it has moved through all 3 rooms and into the hallway. Mrs. Rosenberg, passing the door on her way down to the yard, will smell it. She will think something about it that she will not say, because in this hallway you smell each other's cooking every day, and you do not remark on it unless you are close enough to remark on everything. And neighborly is not quite that close. Samuel comes home at 3:30, and the first thing he does, before he has fully closed the door, is lift his nose and say something about supper that is both a question and a declaration. "Put your jacket on the peg," Rosa says. He puts his jacket on the peg. Miriam comes in at 4 and sits at the table with her reader. She says nothing about the soup because Miriam is 13 and has reached the age where commenting on supper feels less dignified than simply eating it, which she will do at 6, with the same hunger as Samuel, but with considerably less announcement. Isaac comes home at 8:45, and the soup is warm, held on the back of the stove over the lowest coal that will still do the job. He sits. Rosa sets the bowl in front of him. He eats. There is a question that could be asked about a meal like this one. Bean soup from a bone and 2 potatoes, eaten at a table in a kitchen the size of a closet, in an apartment that costs $10.50 a month. Whether it is enough? The answer is yes. The answer is barely. The answer is that barely enough. Managed well, and eaten at the end of a day that demanded everything, is not nothing. It is something with a cost and a value and a daily repetition that keeps this family in the category of families that are managing, which is the category they are working every week to stay in. Rosa does not sit until everyone else has eaten. Then she sits with her own bowl. The children in the middle room. Isaac across from her with his second cup of water. And the soup from the bone is warm, and it is enough, and she eats it with the simple attention of someone fueling herself for tomorrow. The crate under the counter has what it has. Tomorrow she will look at it and make the calculation. The numbers will tell her what the day can hold. They always do. At 5 in the morning, Isaac is already on the street. The walk to the contract shop takes 12 minutes. He moves at the pace of a man who left a warm apartment for cold air and wants the walking to be over. He passes other men going in the same direction. The small pre-dawn movement of workers heading toward the rooms where the day's work will happen. They do not generally talk. You do not need to talk to recognize a man making the same walk for the same reason. The shop is on the 3rd floor of a brick building not far from Delancey. 3rd floor, door on the left. By the time Isaac arrives, 6 other men are already there. By 6:15 the room is full. 14 men. A room perhaps 20 feet square. 2 long tables. Men on benches on either side. Fabric piled at one end. Finished work stacked at the other. The work moving between those 2 points through the hands of the men in sequence. Isaac is the presser. He works near the window, which in July matters enormously, and in November matters less, but still matters. Because the window is the only opening in a room that has 14 people and 2 coal braziers, and the steam from 2 pressing irons going continuously from 6 in the morning until 8:30 at night. The irons weigh 8 pounds. When fully heated, they are too hot to hold. Without the heavy cloth pad, he wraps around the handle. He lifts the iron, presses it along the seam or lapel of whatever piece has come to him from the cutter 2 positions down, lifts it back to the brazier, picks up the second iron, which has been heating while he used the first, press, returns, back and forth, 14 hours. His hands at the end of a day are the hands of someone who has been doing this for years. The skin thickened along the palm and the inside of the fingers. The knuckle of his right index finger, carrying a small scar from 2 years ago when the second iron slipped. He does not think about his hands. They do what they need to do. When they are sore, he notes it. When they are not sore, he does not think about them at all. The room fills with steam from the pressing and coal smoke from the braziers and the smell of new fabric worked under heat. A smell that Isaac carries home in his coat and hair. A smell that Leah has come to associate entirely with her father, the way children associate certain smells with certain people. Completely and without thinking about it. $1.15 for a full day. On the days when work is plentiful, this is what he takes home. On the days when the fabric is late, or the order was smaller than expected, he might be sent away at noon with 60 cents. This has happened 4 times in the past 2 months. October was a slow month, and the arithmetic of the Adler household reflected this in ways that Rosa adjusted for, without making the adjustments visible to the children. By 7 in the evening, the light in the room has shifted. The oil lamps along the walls go up. The men work by lamplight for the last 2 or 3 hours. The smoke from the lamps adding to the air that has been accumulating since 6 in the morning. Isaac's back, by this hour, is not a background discomfort. It is a presence he is actively managing, adjusting his position against the bench, shifting his weight, pressing on because the work is there, and pausing is not a choice that changes anything. At 8:30, the owner says the word. The men put down their work. Isaac sets both irons on the brazier to cool, puts on his coat, picks up the cloth that held his lunch, and goes down the stairs and out into the street and turns toward Orchard. 12 minutes. Now here is the thing about a tenement apartment, and what it means when someone like Isaac comes home to one. He does not come home to a place where work has stopped. Rosa is at the table. She has been at the table, or near it, or moving between the table and the kitchen. Since before 6 this morning, the soup is on the back of the stove. The children have eaten. Leah is asleep. Samuel is somewhere near it. Miriam is in the front room near the lamp, finishing the last pieces of a bundle of collar facings that came in Tuesday morning and go back Friday afternoon. On the table in front of Rosa, laid out in the order that makes the work go fastest, is the piecework. Each piece is a collar facing roughly the size of a playing card, requiring careful stitches along 2 seams. Rosa does not count the pieces anymore. She counts the time. She knows that at her pace, the full bundle takes 2.5 days. She knows what the bundle pays when it is done. 60 cents. Not $6. Not enough to change anything on its own. 60 cents added to Isaac's wages and Mr. Weiss's $2 and folded into the week's arithmetic until the week comes out. If the week comes out, approximately even. This is the piecework system. The manufacturer does not need another factory floor. The factory floor is already in every apartment in this neighborhood, sitting at every table, working by every lamp, run by women who are simultaneously managing the household and the children and the sick and the food and the coal and everything else the apartment requires. The pay reflects none of that. The pay reflects only the piece. Rosa does not think about this in these terms. She thinks about the pile on the right, which is what remains, and the pile on the left, which is what she has done. And the fact that the left pile has grown past the halfway point tonight, which means the week is going well. Isaac hangs his coat, sits. Rosa puts his supper on the table without being asked. He eats. She picks up her needle. They are in the same room. The lamp is between them. Outside, the building settles into its nighttime sounds. The shaft moves its air. The staircase is quiet. Behind the curtain, Mr. Weiss has been still since 9. Isaac finishes his soup, sets down the spoon. How was today? Rosa says. She is not looking at him. She is looking at the piece in her hands. Full day, he says. Again, the same words. There was work. The week continues correctly. She nods, takes the next piece from the pile. He sits without moving, the way a man sits when he has spent 14 hours on his feet and has arrived at stillness and intends to remain there as long as the evening allows. He is not sleeping. He is present in the way that is different from rested. In the small space between the end of one very long thing and the beginning of the next, Rosa works. She works the way she works all day, efficiently, without wasted motion. The needle through the fabric, with a rhythm that has been in her hands long enough that it no longer requires thought. She works in the same room where the family ate and where the children did their schoolwork and where Mr. Weiss reads behind his curtain in the evenings. She works in the room that was the workshop at 9 this morning and the dining room at 6 tonight, and that will be in another hour. The room she and Isaac pass through on the way to sleep. The lamp burns. The needle moves. Isaac, watching her from across the table, says nothing. He has watched her work like this for 6 years. There is something in the watching that lives past admiration and past sorrow, that sits in the register of a man who understands what his wife is doing and what it takes, and who does the only thing available to him, which is to be in the room, to be the person across the table from whom she is working. He gets up, pours a cup of water, sits back down. She sets down a finished piece, picks up the next. The lamp is still burning. The needle is still moving. Outside, on Orchard Street, the night has arrived in full. And in the front room of the apartment on the 3rd floor, the work continues as it continues every evening. In the room that is always both the place you live and the place you work, where the line between the day and the night is drawn not by a clock, but by the moment when Rosa sets down her needle and the lamp goes out. That moment is still an hour away. There is a moment that happens in this apartment. Not every day, but often enough to have become part of the texture of the place, where all 3 children are in the front room at the same time. And the front room cannot comfortably hold all 3 children and whatever else is happening in it. On those afternoons, the apartment produces a sound that is not quite chaos and not quite harmony, but lives somewhere between them. The particular acoustic signature of a small space containing more life than it was built for. Rosa manages it from the kitchen doorway with the minimal intervention she has found works best. A word, a redirect, sometimes just her presence in the doorway, which changes the energy in the front room in a way that cannot be entirely explained by anything she says. The disagreement ends. The work resumes. The apartment has 3 rooms and 5 family members and 1 boarder. And at no point in the day is any of those 3 rooms used for only one thing. There is no child's room here. There is no corner that belongs to a child alone. No space set aside for play, or for the particular private existence that children in other circumstances might take as a given. The space the Adler children occupy is the same space where Rosa sews and Isaac eats, and Mr. Weiss sleeps behind his curtain, and the family conducts the full range of its life. The children exist inside this space, the way everything else does, purposefully, without waste of room. They have each made a different arrangement with this fact. Miriam, at 13, has made the arrangement of someone who learned early that her interior life had nowhere to go but her head, and so she keeps it there, carefully, the way you keep something valuable in a place where it will not be knocked over. She is a girl who reads when she can find light and time and a position that is not in the way of something else, which is a complicated set of conditions to satisfy simultaneously in an apartment where the good light is limited to the front window and the time is limited to the margins of the day. She has developed the ability to be present in a room without being fully in it, to sit at the table doing schoolwork while the kitchen sounds and the talking move around her, processing it as background, the way people who grow up in dense spaces learn to do. Her teacher told her in October that she had a talent for reading. Miriam received this information with careful attention and did not immediately respond. She thought about it on the walk home. She thought about what it meant to have a talent for something that required conditions this apartment could not reliably provide. She has not stopped reading. There is a particular time, between 7 and 8 on school mornings, when Isaac has left and Leah is finishing breakfast and Samuel is collecting his things and the front room is briefly, partially less full than usual. Miriam sits at the table with her reader for 20 minutes and reads with the concentrated intensity of someone who knows exactly how long the window stays open. She reads quickly. She retains what she reads with the accuracy of someone who cannot afford to read things twice. On the afternoons, when she sits beside Rosa sewing the piecework, she reads between pieces, not the school book. A novel borrowed from a girl at school. Read now for the third time, because the third reading shows things the first two did not. She marks certain sentences lightly in pencil, a notation system she invented that means something only to her. Rosa has seen these marks. She asked about them once. Miriam explained in a way that answered the question without fully answering it, and Rosa did not ask again. Samuel, at 9, has a different arrangement with the apartment. He is almost never entirely in it. His body is present, his jacket on the peg and his boots at the door. But the quality of his presence is that of someone who is simultaneously somewhere else, who has a running commentary in his mind about the street outside and the building around him and the things he has observed and is in the process of organizing. He is not a dreamy child. He is an alert one. Alert in a direction that points outward. He is learning English faster than anyone in the family, partly because he is 9, and a 9-year-old brain absorbs language the way new wood takes stain, quickly and completely. Partly because his friend Patrick on Broome Street speaks no German, and Samuel's choices in that friendship are English or silence. And Samuel does not choose silence. And partly because Samuel has decided, in the way 9-year-olds sometimes decide things, without fully articulating the decision even to themselves, that English is the material the future is made of, and he intends to be fluent in the future. 2 weeks ago at supper, he corrected Isaac's pronunciation of a word in English. Gently. Just handing the right sound across. The way you hand someone something they dropped without making a production of it. Isaac repeated the word correctly and said nothing else. Later that night, Rosa heard Isaac in the kitchen alone, saying the word quietly to himself several times. She has not told Samuel this. Some things in this apartment belong to the person they happen to. Leah, at 4, has a relationship to the apartment that is the most purely physical of the three. She knows it by touch, by the temperature of the floor under her feet in different rooms. The kitchen floor warmer near the stove. The middle room floor coldest in the mornings before the heat has moved through the doorway. She knows the bottom shelf of the kitchen counter, where she is not supposed to reach but does, having determined through repeated experiment that the consequence is being told not to do it again, which has happened enough times that the consequence has lost whatever force it started with. She knows the 2 wooden spools that are her primary toys by their weight and the different sounds they make on different surfaces. The hollow clatter on the kitchen floor, the duller sound on the rug in the front room, the near silence on the mattress in the middle room when she takes them there, which she is also not supposed to do. She does not know the apartment is small. She does not have the context that makes smallness a comparative judgment. The 3 rooms are simply the world. The way for any 4-year-old. The immediate surroundings are the world, unmeasured against other possibilities. Not missing anything that has been specifically identified as absent. She plays on the kitchen floor while Rosa works. She sits near Samuel when he is doing something she finds interesting, which is most things Samuel does. She sleeps against Miriam's back at night with the complete trust of someone who has never once woken up cold. The day will come when she understands the apartment differently, when a friend's apartment, or a sentence someone says at school, or a picture somewhere, will provide the comparison that changes what this place looks like when you look at it. But that day has not come. Right now she rolls her spools and Rosa steps over them without asking her to move them, because moving them will produce a negotiation, and Rosa has calculated that the negotiation costs more than the mild inconvenience of stepping around a spool. All 3 children do their schoolwork at the table in the front room. This produces different evenings depending on the night. On the best ones, the table holds both older children and their work, and a lamp and a silence that is not peaceful exactly, but is functional. The focused quiet of a space where everyone is engaged with something. On other evenings, Samuel has decided that whatever Miriam is doing is worth investigating at close range, and Miriam has decided that Samuel's proximity to her work is incompatible with the work's completion. Rosa manages these evenings from the kitchen doorway. A vote, a redirect, sometimes just her presence. The disagreement ends. The work resumes. Isaac, watching his children at the table on a Friday evening, has a thought he does not say out loud. He has it the way he has many things in this apartment, internally, in the same place where he practices the English word, Samuel corrected. What he thinks is that his children are becoming people he could not have predicted. That Miriam has a quality of attention that did not come from him, and did not come from Rosa, but arrived somehow in the space between them and this apartment, and the years lived inside it. That Samuel moves through the world with a certainty about his own navigation that Isaac himself does not have, and that he is not sure he is responsible for giving his son. That Leah, who is 4, and who does not yet know the apartment is small, has a quality of contentment that he finds both reassuring and quietly mysterious. He does not know what the apartment is making of his children. He knows they are growing. He knows the apartment cannot hold them in the end. And something about this, about the growing and the not being able to hold, is the thing underneath all the other things. The thing that makes the piecework and the rent and the dark staircase and the shaft and the water bucket and all the rest of it worth what it costs. He picks up his fork. The children are at the table. The lamp is lit. The Friday soup is warm. This is the family. These are the rooms. This is what they have made in the space that was given to them. It is not what anyone would have chosen, and it is not nothing. On a Tuesday morning in November, Samuel leaves the apartment with a list. The list is in his head. Rosa gave it to him in words, which is how she gives lists to Samuel, because written lists get lost or left on the stoop, and these items need to arrive home. Bread from the German baker on Hester. The dark loaf, not the light one. A spool of white thread from the notions cart near Orchard and Grand. And if the cart on the east side of Orchard still has the dried figs that appeared last week, 3 of those, but only if the price is what Rosa told him it should be. A specific number he carries in his head, like a coin he is not spending until necessary. He comes out of the building onto Orchard Street and stops for 1 full second. He does this every time. A moment at the top of the stoop before he goes down into the street. Not hesitation, not arrival. Something between the two. A second of orientation that has become automatic. The way his other habits in this building are automatic. Then he goes down the steps. Orchard Street on a Tuesday morning cannot be described from outside itself. It has to be entered. It is not loud in one unified way. It is loud in several simultaneous ways that layer on top of each other. The delivery wagons running from the loading docks near the river up through the neighborhood. Heavy and horse-drawn. The horses' shoes on cobblestone felt in the soles of your feet before they reach your ears. The push carts, which stop and call and negotiate. The vendors in 6 languages at volumes that carry a full block. The general sound of the building behind him, filtering out through walls and windows. 40 families in 2 buildings, all in the middle of their mornings. And the smell. Writers and inspectors and charity workers who passed through this neighborhood in these years wrote about the smell with a consistency that suggests it was genuinely something, which is to say, it was the smell of density. Many people and many animals and many cooking fires and limited sanitation, all in close proximity on streets designed for fewer people and different uses. The cobblestones hold it. The buildings hold it. In summer, it is the dominant fact of being outdoors. In November, the cold presses it down into something more manageable. A presence rather than an assault. Samuel does not notice it in any conscious way. It is the smell of outside, which is distinct from the smell of inside, and that distinction is what matters. He goes down the block. At the corner of Hester Street, the market is in operation. The push carts positioned with the precision of a choreography that evolved over years without being planned. The woman who sells dried goods has her cart near the fire hydrant. which gives her customers a reason to stop that is not her selling them something. A technique Samuel has watched and thinks is probably intentional. The man who sells herring from a barrel has positioned himself so the smell travels in the direction of the heaviest foot traffic. Samuel watches this and files it. He finds the baker. Dark loaf. Not the light one. 2 cents. He hands over the coins and takes the bread and holds it against his body the way Rosa showed him. Not dangling from a hand where it can swing against things. The notions cart is where it usually is. The thread is a penny. He checks the color against what Rosa told him. White. The right kind of white, not the cream that sometimes gets substituted. The figs. He walks a block and a half to the cart where he saw them last week. The man who runs it is broad with a dark beard and has a way of watching his own customers that Samuel respects. The watchfulness of someone paying as much attention to the situation as the situation is paying to him. The figs are there. 3 cents for 4. Rosa said 3 cents for 4 was the number. He buys 4 instead of 3. Because 4 for 3 cents is better arithmetic than 3 for 3 cents. And Rosa would make the same calculation. He turns toward home. On the way back, he passes the things he passes every time he walks this block. The building on the corner with scaffolding that has been there since August. The small synagogue on the 2nd floor of a narrow building. Its door open this morning. A few men going in and out. The school 2 blocks down. Red brick. Serious-faced. A boy he knows. Danny Farber is standing outside a building doing nothing in particular, which is a thing Samuel understands because he does it too, using the standing as a placeholder for the thinking. Where are you going? Danny says. Home, Samuel says. I saw a dead horse on Grand Street this morning, Danny says. Before you were up, Samuel considers this. Was it there when you came past just now? Gone, Danny says. They moved it. Samuel accepts this and moves on. He passes the woman selling hot sweet potatoes from a cart on the corner. The smell is warm and specific, and Samuel associates it with cold mornings, in the particular way that smells attach themselves to moments without asking permission. He does not buy one. He does not have money for it. He notes it, the way he notes all the things on this street that exist just at the edge of what is possible. At the stoop of his building, he stops for the same 1 second he stopped for when he left. Then he goes up and inside. Rosa takes the bread and the thread and the figs. She looks at the figs briefly, counts them, puts them in the back of the crate where Miriam will not see them. Samuel puts on his school things. He does not describe the street to Rosa. She knows the street. She walks it several times a week, with Leah on her hip and her eye on the scales, and her mind on the calculation of what she has and what she needs. She does not need the street described to her, but the street is there. It is always there, 4 steps below the building's entrance. The other half of this family's life, the part that is not the apartment, the part where the city comes directly into contact with the people who live inside it. In the apartment, the ceiling is low and the walls are close, and everything has a function, and there is no extra room for anything that does not serve a purpose. On the street, the ceiling is the sky, which in November is gray and cold, but is still the sky, which is still above you instead of around you, which is still different. This is what the apartment cannot give the children. The ceiling, the sky above instead of 4 walls around, The particular expansion of a 9-year-old body when it comes out of a building and realizes it can move in more than one direction. Samuel is going to be late for school. He picks up his things and goes back out. Down the 4 steps into the street. The city takes him. It always does. Rosa does the washing on Wednesday. Not because Wednesday has any particular virtue as a day for washing, because Wednesday is the day Mrs. Goldstein on the 2nd floor does not use the tap in the rear yard during the early morning hours. Mrs. Goldstein washes on Tuesday. The woman below her washes on Monday. This arrangement was not negotiated formally. It arrived the way most arrangements in this building arrive, through repetition and small accommodations, and the gradual understanding that the alternative is conflict over a tap, which costs more than coordination. Wednesday is Rosa's day. She has held it for 4 years. She begins the night before. After the children are asleep, she sorts the week's laundry in the middle room, separating what cannot wait from what can. Isaac's work shirts cannot wait. They carry the smell of the pressing shop and the coal braziers, and 14 hours of physical work, and Isaac needs them for tomorrow and the day after. The children's school clothes cannot wait. Everything else is a judgment based on available water, available time, and available space for drying, which in November is its own problem because nothing dries outdoors in November as quickly as you need it to. Wednesday morning before 6, she fills the big pot from the bucket and sets it on the stove. While the water heats, she moves the furniture in the kitchen enough to bring out the wooden washtub she stores behind the door. The washtub is heavier than it looks when empty. Getting it into position without waking the children requires the slow carefulness she has gotten good at across 4 years of mornings that required it. Isaac has gone. Mr. Weiss is behind his curtain. She works in the growing lamplight. The stove, heating the kitchen in the particular way, it heats it at full capacity, which is strongly near the stove and noticeably less so 2 feet away. The hot water goes into the tub, a bar of lye soap she makes in small batches from the ash, and the rendered fat she saves in a tin near the back of the counter. The first piece of laundry goes in. Washing by hand in a wooden tub is not difficult to describe, but is difficult to do for the length of time it requires. The hands moving through hot water with a sustained pressure. The water cooling. More hot water from the pot. The first piece comes out wrung and set aside. The next piece goes in. She works without stopping. The kitchen fills with steam from the hot water and the sharp, honest smell of the lye soap, which cuts through the accumulated smells of the building the way a clear sound cuts through noise. This is the cleanest the apartment will smell all week. Not clean in the way a building with better ventilation is clean. Clean in the way this apartment can be clean, which is specifically and temporarily and always with effort behind it. Miriam wakes and comes to the kitchen doorway and reads the situation without being told what is needed. She steps in and takes the piece from her mother and wrings it. Wringing is the hardest physical part. Extracting water from wet wool and cotton requires a sustained force that makes the hands sore after an hour. And Rosa's hands are already sore, from the sewing and from the coal and from 4 years of this apartment and its requirements. They work side by side in the small kitchen without speaking much. The steam rises. The pot needs refilling. Miriam goes to the bucket, fills the pot, returns. The rhythm between them is the rhythm of two people who have done something together enough times that the coordination is in the body rather than the mind. By 10, the washing is done. Rosa carries the basket down to the rear yard. The line is free. She pins each piece quickly, because the cold this morning is the kind that settles into wet hands within seconds and does not leave until you are back inside. The yard smells of the outhouse and the ash heap that should have been cleared, and the particular cold of a space that the sun will not reach until afternoon. She hangs the laundry and goes back inside. Whether it dries today depends on variables she cannot control. Temperature, whether the sky does what it has been suggesting it might do since yesterday, whether the line stays free. She has brought in wet laundry in the dark before, hung it across the ropes in the middle room and the kitchen, the damp clothes adding their moisture to the air, already heavy with the building's own dampness. The smell of wet wool sitting in the apartment until morning. This is not a disaster. It is a condition. Now here is the thing that the charity visitors and the housing inspectors who came through buildings like this one in these years sometimes saw and sometimes did not. The people who lived in these apartments were not careless about cleanliness. They were fighting for it every day with the materials available, which were limited, against conditions that renewed themselves continuously, which was the nature of the building. Rosa wipes down the kitchen surfaces every evening. She sweeps the floor every morning. She checks the corners where dampness gathers and works it back with cloth and effort. She airs the bedding when the air outside is worth airing it into, which is not always but is sometimes. She fights the bedbugs with the flat of a knife and a sharp-smelling tincture the woman on the first floor told her about, applied to the mattress seams in the fall before the building's warmth brings them back. She keeps the food covered and the crate secured against the mice that move into the apartment when the cold arrives. She does all of this, and it is not sufficient to achieve what cleanliness means in a building with real ventilation and a private bathroom and hot running water. It is sufficient to achieve what cleanliness can mean in a building that has none of those things, which is something less than ideal and something considerably more than nothing, and which represents a daily investment of will and labor that no ledger records and no inspector's notebook counts. If you could wash properly in this apartment, you would need hot water, which means fuel, which means coal, which means money. You would need space, which means the bathroom that does not exist. You would need somewhere for wet things to dry, which means the clothesline and the good weather that does not always cooperate. You would need time, which is the scarcest resource in a household where the work does not stop. The bathhouses on Delancey Street provide what the apartment cannot. A proper bath, actual hot water, actual space. The cost is more than a day's bread per person. Rosa saves for it the way she saves for other necessities. Not weekly, but when the week permits. Once a month, on good months, and less on others. When it does not happen, she manages the children's washing in the tub with water heated on the stove. Each child in sequence, from smallest to largest. Leah, first in the warmest water, then Samuel, then Miriam, then Rosa herself. When everyone else is done, and the water is whatever temperature it has become by then, Isaac washes at the street pump on Delancey on the evenings, when he gets out before it closes. On other evenings, he washes in the kitchen with the rag and the basin, thoroughly enough to be a person who moves through the world without causing others to step away from him. This is the practical standard that the life allows. Wednesday afternoon. the laundry comes in before the sky makes a decision about it. Most of it is dry. Two of Isaac's shirts are still damp at the collars. She hangs them on the rope strung across the front room. The rope kept for this purpose, that Mr. Weiss navigates around in the mornings with the mild courtesy of a man who understands the terms of his arrangement. By evening, the shirts are dry. Rosa takes them down and folds them with the precise folds she always uses, and sets them on the small shelf above the peg. They are clean. The apartment around them smells of the lye soap and the damp wool that dried near the stove, and underneath everything, the coal and the cooking and the building, the shirts are clean. This is what Wednesday produces. 2 clean shirts, and a basket of clean clothes, and a kitchen floor swept, and surfaces wiped, and a woman who is tired in the specific way of someone who has been fighting a condition all day that will begin reasserting itself by morning. She puts the tub back behind the kitchen door, starts the supper, does not sit down. The shirts are clean. In a building that works against cleanliness at every turn, every clean shirt is a decision made and acted on. A daily refusal to let the conditions of the building define the conditions of the household. No one awards this. No one records it. It is simply what Rosa does. What it means is what it means. Wednesday is done. Leah's cough begins on a Sunday. Not dramatically. It arrives the way most things arrive in this apartment, in the ordinary texture of the day, indistinguishable at first from the ordinary ailments that move through children in buildings like this one with the regularity and variety of weather. A cough. Sunday morning. Rosa notes it from the kitchen and continues stirring the pot. By Tuesday, it is something else. The cough has moved. It is deeper now, seated further in Leah's chest, and it has acquired a quality that is different from the surface cough of a cold. Rosa hears it across the apartment while she is working. She hears it when it is not there, which is the kind of listening that happens when something has moved from the category of ordinary into the category that requires attention. She knows this kind of cough. She knew it before she knew its name. She grew up in Hamburg in rooms that had some of the same qualities as these. The density, the limited air, the way illness moved between neighbors without asking permission. She knew 2 children on her street who had the cough that moved deeper. One of them recovered. She does not tell Isaac this. She tells him Leah has a cough and that she is watching it. He nods in the way that means he heard and that he is watching too, and that neither of them is going to say the rest of what they are both calculating. Wednesday morning, she keeps Leah inside. The child is unhappy about this. She is 4 years old, and the inside is where she always is. But on days when she is kept inside because she is not well, there is something different about the inside, a quality of being contained that she does not have the words for, but that she communicates through a low, sustained restlessness, moving between rooms, sitting down, standing up, wanting things that are not quite the things she asks for. Rosa manages this alongside the washing and the sewing and the cooking and the general momentum of the day, which does not slow because one of the children is unwell. It did not slow last winter when Samuel had the fever that lasted 4 days. It did not slow in February when Rosa herself had the thing in her chest that she worked through for 3 weeks by sleeping less. You manage. You watch. You make the calculation about the doctor. There is a doctor on Allen Street who sees families from this neighborhood. He is not a bad doctor. A consultation costs 50 cents. If he provides medicine, it costs more. 50 cents is not an impossible number. It is a number that requires something else that week to not happen. That requires the arithmetic to be recalculated with 50 cents removed from wherever it currently lives. Rosa knows where 50 cents can come from. She has known since Tuesday. She waits to see which way Wednesday moves. By Wednesday evening, the cough is not worse and not better. The quality of Leah's breathing is something Rosa has been monitoring since morning with the continuous low attention of a woman who has decided she needs more information before she makes a decision that costs 50 cents and an afternoon. Away from the piecework. She heats water, not for tea, for steam. She holds the pot near Leah's face, close enough for the warm moisture to reach whatever in the child's chest is doing what it is doing. Leah sits wrapped in a blanket with her face in the steam, her eyes drooping from the warmth, her breathing slow. For an hour afterward, the cough is quieter. Rosa puts her to bed early and listens through the doorway while she works. In the night, the cough returns. 2 in the morning. Rosa is mostly awake already, in the particular not quite sleeping of someone monitoring something. Her body unwilling to release fully into sleep while the monitoring continues. She goes to the middle room. Leah is sitting up on the mattress in the dark, the blanket around her, the cough coming in waves of 3 or 4. Subsiding, returning. Rosa sits on the edge of the mattress and puts her hand on Leah's forehead. Warm. The specific heat of a body working harder than it should. In the bed above, Miriam shifts but does not wake. Samuel, near the doorway, has the sleep of a child who is not entirely absent. His body incorporating the sounds of the night into whatever version of awake it keeps for emergencies. And Isaac comes to the doorway of the middle room. Rosa hears him get up, sees his shape in the dark. He comes in and sits on the other side of Leah on the mattress, the child between them. He puts his hand on her forehead, the same hand Rosa placed there 2 minutes ago, as if the reading required confirmation. As if two people's hands could produce a more accurate answer than one. Leah leans against him. Her breathing is effortful but not desperate. The cough comes and goes. In 1880, a cough like this one has several possible futures, and the people sitting on either side of it in the dark have no way of knowing which future they are in. 2 years from now, a German scientist named Robert Koch will publish his identification of the bacterium that causes tuberculosis, and the understanding of the disease will change. But in this room, in this night, in 1880, there is no explanation yet. There is only the cough and the fever and the knowledge of what this combination has meant in other rooms, in other buildings, in other years. They sit with that knowledge in the dark. Rosa gets up and goes to the kitchen. She heats water again. She takes the small jar Mrs. Hoffman left with her in October. Something sharp smelling that Mrs. Hoffman's mother used in Munich, and that Mrs. Hoffman has used on her own children, and she rubs it on Leah's chest. The smell fills the middle room. Leah's breathing slows a little. Whether it is the jar, or the warmth of two parents on either side of her, or simply the passage of time, the cough recedes. She falls asleep between them. Isaac and Rosa sit on the mattress with the sleeping child between them for perhaps 10 minutes. He is looking at the shaft opening in the far wall, the cloth cover moving faintly in the exchange between the shaft air and the room air. She is looking at her daughter's face. The building around them continues its nighttime operations. The step on the second floor landing, the family above who move their furniture, the street below that never entirely stops. After a while, Isaac goes back to bed. Rosa stays in the middle room. She moves the stool from the kitchen and sits beside the mattress and watches Leah's chest rise and fall in the dark, listening to the breathing, counting the intervals between coughs, doing the arithmetic of the night with the same precision she applies to every other arithmetic, calculating whether the morning will require the 50 cents and Allen Street or whether the morning will show something different. By 4 in the morning, the fever is slightly down. The cough is still there, but quieter. Something in the quality of it has changed from what it was at 2. Rosa stays another hour. At 5, she goes to the kitchen and starts the fire. The stove takes. The lamp goes up. The kitchen fills with the smell of coal catching. Leah sleeps. The morning will come, and with it more information, and Rosa will respond to the information with what she has, which is what she has always done. The cough will tell her what the day needs, and the day will get what it needs. She stands at the stove and waits for the morning to tell her what it is. Leah passes through this one. The cough loosens over the following days. The fever drops. The breathing clears. By the following Sunday, she is rolling her spools across the kitchen floor again with the focused contentment of a child who has already forgotten being sick. Rosa watches this and says nothing. The 2 words she does not say are, this time. If you looked at the official record of this building, the rent ledger that Farrell carries in his leather-covered book, you would find men's names. Isaac Adler, apartment 3 left. Mr. Weiss, same address. Patrick Brennan, apartment 4, right? Nathan Rosenberg, apartment 3, right. The building exists on paper as a collection of male names making financial arrangements with an absent owner. Stand in the hallway of the 3rd floor on a Tuesday morning and watch who is actually keeping the building alive. And you see something the ledger does not record. Rosa has been running her part of this for 4 years. On the Monday that Farrell comes for the rent, Rosa has the money counted before he knocks. This is known. What is less visible is everything that happened in the days before that Monday to make sure the money was there to count. The Friday calculation, the weighing of which piecework pieces could be finished before Thursday pickup and which would need to wait. The decision about the bread, dark loaf, not the light one, 2 cents less, which is 2 cents. The exchange with Mr. Weiss on a Tuesday evening, 3 days before the rent was due. Not quite a conversation about the rent. A sentence said, in the context of other things, something about the month running close, which communicated what it needed to communicate, without producing the confrontation that neither of them wanted. Mr. Weiss paid the following morning. This kind of management does not have a name in any ledger. It is not a job in the sense that produces a description or a wage. It is what happens in the space between the formal economy and the actual survival of the family. the thing that turns wages and piecework and a boarder's $2 into something the family can live on. Rosa runs it with precision and invisibility, because those are the requirements. Precision because the margins are too small for approximation. Invisibility because the system only works if no one feels managed. If Isaac does not feel the arithmetic operating around him when it is, if Mr. Weiss does not feel the rent conversation was a rent conversation, if the children experience the household economy as ordinary life rather than the result of daily calculation, she is always calculating. The calculation includes things with numbers and things without. The things with numbers are the rent and the food and the coal and the piecework and the wages and Mr. Weiss's $2. The things without numbers are the social calculations, the neighbor relationships that need to be maintained at a particular temperature, warm enough that help is available when needed, not so warm that the warmth creates obligations that cost more than they provide. Mrs. Hoffman on the second floor is an ally. She has been in this building longer than almost anyone. She knows its tendencies and its landlord agent and its seasons. She brought the jar when Leah was sick. She passes information about the building in the way information travels in buildings like this one. Quietly, between women, through the hallway and the tap and the rear yard. Rosa maintains this relationship with a care that looks like friendship because it is friendship, but friendship that Rosa understood from the first winter is also something practical, and the two things are not in conflict. Mrs. Goldstein, 2 doors down, is kept at a different temperature. On holidays, Rosa brings something small from the kitchen. This costs almost nothing and maintains the relationship at the level required. Mrs. Goldstein knows the vendor on Hester Street who has the better herring and passes this along when she thinks to, this is worth a small gift on holidays. Then there is the apartment itself. Mr. Weiss is not a difficult man. He is a solitary man who needs a place to sleep and whose $2 a month make the rent arithmetic work. But his presence means Rosa is never entirely alone in the apartment that is supposed to be hers. Every conversation that matters between her and Isaac happens inside the awareness that Mr. Weiss is 4 feet away and can hear through a curtain. Every private moment has its limit. There are days when Rosa looks at the curtain and thinks about privacy not as something lost, but as something sold. Sold for $2 a month, for the rent, for the arithmetic to work, for Miriam to stay in school 1 more month. The piecework money goes into the household. There is no separate fund that belongs to Rosa, because there is no separate fund, only the household. But in the back of the calculation, she maintains a smaller number, a number she has not discussed with Isaac, an accumulation built over 2 years toward a purpose she has not fully named out loud. The purpose is Miriam. Specifically, whether the year when Miriam is supposed to leave school and go to work full-time is in fact the year she leaves, or whether the number in the back of the calculation will have grown enough by then to make a different conversation possible. She has not told Isaac. The number is not yet certain enough to discuss. When it is, she will discuss it. Until then, it lives where it lives, in the back of the arithmetic. Alongside the other long-term things, she is managing toward outcomes that are not this week or this month. On Wednesday evening, after the washing and the cooking and the piecework and the management of Leah's cough, and the supper, and the children asleep, and the brief quiet with Isaac. Rosa sits at the table for 20 minutes. Her 20 minutes. She has been taking them for as long as she has been in this apartment. Not every night. Most nights, a practice she arrived at gradually and has protected against the encroachments of the day with a stubbornness she does not apply to many things she does for herself. She sits with her tea. The lamp is low. The building makes its nighttime sounds. Mr. Weiss breathes steadily behind his curtain. The children are asleep. The street below is in its nighttime version of itself. She does not plan. She does not calculate. She simply sits. The tea is warm. The room is hers. In a way, it is not hers at any other point in the day. Then she pinches the lamp and goes to bed. In the morning, she will start again. The fire, the water, the calculation, the piecework, the children, the food, the negotiation with the building and its conditions and its continuous demands. She will do it with the same precision she brought to yesterday and will bring to tomorrow. The apartment will continue to hold the Adler family inside it. Not because the building was designed to support them. It was not. But because one woman has learned how to make 3 rooms do the work of 10 and has been doing it every day without stopping. Her 20 minutes end. The lamp goes out. There is no fire in this chapter. The absence of fire is the point. The point is not the fire that happened. The point is the fire that did not happen, that might have, that everyone in this building carries in the back of their mind the way they carry the rent number and the sound of the shaft and the weight of a bucket on the staircase, a fear that does not announce itself and does not leave. Samuel understood it first, because Samuel woke up. It was a Thursday night in October. October had decided to be November early. Cold pressing through the windows and under the doors with the patience of something that has been waiting all summer for permission. Samuel was asleep on his quilt near the doorway of the middle room. The blanket pulled up in the way he pulls it when the cold has arrived for the season. He woke because of the smell, not the usual smells of the apartment. The coal and the cooking and the shaft air and the particular layered smell of a closed building in cold weather. This was something underneath all of that, sharper, the specific quality of something burning that is not a stove burning. He sat up. The apartment was dark. The lamp in the front room was out. The stove in the kitchen was banked, coals under ash, doing the slow work of surviving until morning. The smell was there, thin, but present. Samuel sat in the dark and did something without being able to explain how he knew to do it. He turned his head slowly, trying to locate the direction the smell was strongest. He was 9 years old, and this was instinct. The instinct of someone who has grown up in a building where the things that can go wrong are immediately and physically close. The smell was coming from the front room. He got up without making noise, feet on the cold floor, through the kitchen, into the front room. Mr. Weiss's lamp was on its side on the floor beside the mattress. The oil had pooled and not yet burned because the lamp had gone out when it fell. But the glass was cracked, and the oil was spreading across the old dry floorboards, and Mr. Weiss was asleep behind the curtain. Samuel stood in the front room for 1 full second. Then he stepped around the curtain and put his hand on Mr. Weiss's shoulder and said his name. Mr. Weiss woke the way old men who have lived alone wake. Immediately, eyes fully open, he looked at Samuel. Samuel pointed at the floor. Mr. Weiss saw the lamp and the oil and was up before Samuel had fully straightened. They cleaned it together in the dark. Mr. Weiss, with the rag from the kitchen, Samuel holding the cracked lamp upright. Neither of them spoke above a murmur, because the apartment was asleep and there was no reason to change that. They cleaned the oil from the boards, as well as a rag and cold water, and the urgency of the moment could manage. They set the broken lamp outside the apartment door. They went back to their respective sleeping places. In the morning, Rosa found the lamp outside the door and looked at Samuel, and Samuel told her what happened, and she listened without interrupting, and when he finished, she put her hand on his head for a moment, the gesture she uses for Leah when Leah has done something right, wordless. Exactly enough. She never mentioned it to Mr. Weiss. He never mentioned it to anyone. Something changed in the apartment after that night. Not dramatically. A quality of awareness that had always been present but now had a specific shape, a specific example to attach to. The oil on the floor, the cracked glass, the dry old boards. Isaac heard about it Friday evening. He said nothing at the time. After supper, after the children were occupied, he went to the front room and stood there for a while. He looked at the boards. He looked at the curtain. He looked at the distance from Mr. Weiss's corner to the apartment door. He looked at the doorway and the hall beyond it and the staircase at the end of the hall. Then he went to the shelf above the kitchen counter and looked at the lamp there. He moved it 6 inches away from the wall. Looked at 6 inches. Moved it 2 more. He went to bed without mentioning this to Rosa. She noticed the lamp in the new position in the morning and said nothing. The lamp stayed where Isaac had moved it. Now here is what Isaac did not say, what he had already been calculating for years. Not every day, but on certain nights, when the building spoke more than usual, when a smell came through the apartment that should not have been there, or when he passed something on the street that he could not entirely stop thinking about. One evening in November, he was walking home and went a block out of his way and saw the shell of a building on a street he knew. He had heard about it at the shop 2 days before. One of the men mentioning it, the way men mention things that are close to home. The building had burned. The fire started somewhere in the lower floors. It moved fast. Isaac stood on the sidewalk and looked at what was left. The outer brick walls were standing. The interior was gone. The window openings were open now in the way windows are not supposed to be open. Empty frames, looking into darkness. On the sidewalk in front, the things people had carried out. Crate. Some clothing folded and stacked. A child's wooden toy that no one had come back for yet. He stood there for a while. Then he walked home. 12 minutes. The same streets. He thought about the staircase in his building. One staircase, 60 feet from the 3rd floor to the street. He thought about the air shaft, which runs the full height of the building and which, if a fire found it from any floor below, would do what moving air and an open vertical channel do. He thought about 4 steps from the apartment door to the top of the staircase. He thought about how deeply Leah sleeps. He came home, ate supper, moved the lamp 8 inches from where it had been. Did not tell Rosa what he had seen, because telling her would not change the building and would add something to what she is already carrying, which is already a full load. She noticed the lamp in the morning. She said nothing. Samuel, since October, has a habit. When he comes into the apartment at the end of the day, before he hangs his jacket, he counts. He does it quickly now, automatically. The way avoiding the left side of the fourth step is automatic. 4 steps from the apartment door to the top of the staircase. 12 steps to the second floor landing. 12 more to the ground. He does not think about why he does it. He does not consciously connect it to the night of the oil and the cracked lamp. It is simply a thing he does now. A small accounting of the distance between where the family sleeps and where the street is. 4 and 12 and 12. He hangs up his jacket. The apartment receives him the way it always does. Smell and warmth and the sounds of wherever the day left everyone. He is home. The building is around him on all sides, and it is tonight. Not burning. Tonight, that is what there is. The knock comes on a Thursday morning in early December. Rosa sets down the piece she is working on and goes to the door. The man in the hallway is perhaps 45. His coat is clean and pressed in the way coats are clean and pressed when the person wearing them does not live in this building. He holds his hat in his hands and carries a notebook under his arm. He introduces himself as Mr. Ellis, a Board of Health inspector conducting a review of tenement conditions under the current housing regulations. He says it carefully, with the manner of someone who has thought about how to present himself to people who have reason to be cautious about official visitors. Rosa steps back from the door. He comes in. He stands in the front room and looks at it with the particular attention of someone assessing rather than seeing. His eyes move across the ceiling, the window, the curtain at the back of the room. He notes something in his notebook. He looks at the air shaft opening through the middle room doorway and writes something. He looks at the curtain a second time. Rosa watches him look at the curtain. She knows what he is writing. She does not know what he thinks he is writing, which is a different thing. He is writing about an interior partition, or about the sleeping arrangement behind it, or about whether what he is looking at meets the definition of adequate private quarters under the regulation he carries in his notebook. What she could tell him, if he asked, which he has not yet, is what the curtain means in practical terms. That Mr. Weiss's $2 a month is the difference between making the rent and not making it in the months when the shop runs slow. That Mr. Weiss has been in this building 9 years and knows which agent responds to which kind of concern and has made that knowledge available more than once. That the curtain divides a space in which 6 people have coexisted with a level of mutual understanding that works, and has worked for 4 years. He asks how many people live in the apartment. She tells him. He writes it down. He asks about the water supply. She tells him about the tap in the rear yard, shared by this building and the building behind it. Roughly 40 families between them, using one tap. He writes. He asks to see the kitchen. She shows him the kitchen. He looks at the stove, the board on sawhorses, the crate under the counter. He makes a note about the proximity of the food storage to the stove. He examines the broken window latch, the one that requires a particular angle of pressure to catch. He writes about the latch. Rosa stands near the doorway. He can see the broken latch. He cannot see the number of times she has worked around it, with that particular angle of pressure that makes it hold. He can see the floor, old wood worn dark from years of use. He cannot see how often she sweeps it, and what she uses, and the specific attention she gives to the corner near the stove where dampness comes back. He can see the shaft opening in the middle room. He cannot see the cloth she made for it, and the daily decision she makes about whether the cold or the smell is the worst problem tonight. He can see the apartment. He cannot see the apartment. He comes back to the front room and opens his notebook to a clean page. He has found several conditions that do not meet current standards. He tells her, the ventilation in the sleeping room, the condition of the water facilities in the rear yard, the window latch in the kitchen. A notice will be sent to the building's owner requiring these conditions to be addressed within 30 days. Rosa listens to this. He says it with the tone of a man who believes what he is saying is meaningful. She does not tell him she is uncertain. It is meaningful, only that it has not been meaningful in any way that has changed this apartment. In the 4 years she has lived in it, the Tenement House Act of 1879 changed things that needed to be changed. It required windows where there had been no windows. It produced the air shaft. The air shaft produced the cold draft and the smell column and, as the reformers would later point out, a channel that feeds fire upward through the full height of the building. The intention was good. The outcome was complicated. She asks him one question. She asks whether anything will happen in the next 30 days that affects the family living in the apartment. He pauses. Then he says no. The notice goes to the owner. Enforcement is directed at the owner. The family situation in the apartment is not affected by the process. She nods. He puts his hat on and thanks her for her time and goes to the Rosenberg's door down the hall. Rosa goes back to the table and picks up the piece she set down when he knocked. The needle goes through the fabric. The piece is one of 40 in the Thursday bundle, and she has 23 more to finish before the afternoon. She works. The notice will travel through whatever channel these notices travel. Farrell may or may not pass it along in a form that produces action. The owner may or may not respond within 30 days. The response, if it comes, may or may not include the shaft, or the tap, or the latch, or the step on the second floor landing that has been loose for 8 months. This is not cynicism. This is 4 years of paying attention. 10 years from now, a journalist named Jacob Riis will walk through buildings like this one with a camera and a powder that creates light bright enough to photograph a dark room in a fraction of a second. The photographs will show what the notebooks have been describing for years. The shaft, the crowding, the tap in the rear yard, the curtain where a door should be. The photographs will be published and widely seen, and they will produce the kind of outrage that produces eventually a new law, the Tenement House Act of 1901, which will produce buildings with different requirements and more light and better ventilation. But between Mr. Ellis's notebook and Jacob Riis and the law of 1901 there are 20 years. And in those 20 years, the families in buildings like this one will continue doing what the Adler family is doing, which is to live in the conditions that exist, while the conditions that should exist are being worked toward by men with notebooks and later men with cameras. Rosa finishes the collar facing, sets it on the left pile. The left pile is larger than the right pile. Through the front window, the December street is gray and cold. The vendors moving faster than they do in November because cold makes you work faster or it makes you stop, and nobody on this block can afford to stop. Inside, the front room is warm from the stove. The piecework is on the table. The lamp is where Isaac moved it 8 inches from the wall. Behind the curtain, Mr. Wace is out. Left at 7. Will return at 5 with the smell of the metal shop on his coat. The apartment is what it is. It has a broken latch and a shaft that provides air in the technical sense, and a rear yard tap shared by 40 families, and a staircase that is the only way out, and a curtain where a wall should be. It has all the things Mr. Ellis wrote down. It also has a woman who came here 4 years ago with 2 children and has made in these 3 rooms a household that works, that keeps its family fed and clothed and present, that has navigated every condition this building has produced without failing in any of the ways that would have ended it. The notebook does not have a column for that. The needle moves through the fabric. By this afternoon, the left pile will be larger still. By Thursday pickup, the bundle will be done, and the money will come in on Friday, and the following Monday, Farrell will knock, and the rent will be ready. The apartment holds. Orchard Street, at 9 in the evening in December, is not the Orchard Street of 10 in the morning. The push carts are gone. The vendors have taken their scales and their barrels and their voices in half a dozen languages and gone to whatever buildings they go to at night. To rooms like this one. To the same kind of arithmetic. To the same kind of Tuesday and the same kind of Wednesday. The horses are off the street. The school is dark. The building across the way shows a few lit windows and many dark ones. The ratio moving toward dark as the evening deepens. Below the front window, a single cart passes slow. A man walking with his hands in his coat. 2 women outside the building, 3 doors down. Their voices carrying in the cold without the words being clear. Then they go inside, and the street settles into the register it finds in the last hours before midnight. Still present, still moving, but lower, quieter, the city at a different speed. The apartment on the 3rd floor is winding down. Leah went to sleep at 7. Her breathing clear now. The cough 2 weeks behind her. She is on the mattress in the middle room with Miriam's back against hers and her arm around the rag doll Rosa made from a scrap of cloth. Sleeping with the complete, uncomplicated trust of a child who has never once woken up cold. Samuel is on his quilt near the doorway. He came in tonight, hung his jacket on the peg, and before he did anything else, he counted 4 steps from the door to the top of the staircase. He does this every evening now. He does not think about why. His hands find the jacket peg, and his mind runs the numbers, and neither of these things interrupts the other. Miriam is at the table with the lamp up, the borrowed novel open in front of her. She has read it 3 times now. On this reading, she marks certain sentences in pencil. Lightly, a notation only she understands. Rosa has seen the marks. She asked about them once. She will not ask again. At 9:30, Miriam closes the book, sets the pencil down, and goes to the middle room. Rosa hears the mattress shift, hears Miriam settle, hears the breathing even out. Mr. Weiss came back at 5 and ate at the kitchen counter and retired behind the curtain at 8. His breathing behind it is the steady breathing of someone well into sleep. Now Rosa and Isaac are alone in the front room. This is the hour that belongs most nearly to them. The hour when the apartment releases some of the daytime pressure and becomes briefly a room where two people can occupy the same space without anyone needing anything from them. Isaac came home at 8:45. He ate. He said full day, and she said good, and that was the report on the week. Sufficient and complete. After supper, he went to the middle room doorway and stood there for a moment, looking in at the dark. At the children breathing in the dark. At the shaft in the far wall with the cloth cover moving faintly. He stood long enough to count breaths, which is what he does when he comes to that doorway at night. Then he came back. Now he sits across the table from Rosa with his hands around a cup of water. She is working through the last 6 pieces of the Thursday bundle. She could leave them for morning, but 6 pieces is 30 minutes, and 30 minutes tonight is 30 minutes not taken from tomorrow. And tomorrow has its own requirements. Miriam was reading the borrowed novel again. She says, "Third time now." He says, "More than 3. He turns the cup in his hands. They sit with the things that do not need to be said because both of them already know them. The things that live between two people who have been in the same rooms for 6 years and have stopped needing to convert all of it into language. Rosa sets down a finished piece, picks up the next. He gets up, goes to the middle room doorway again, stands for a moment, comes back. He says goodnight to Rosa. She says goodnight to him. He goes through the kitchen to the middle room, and she hears him lower himself onto the bed with the quiet of someone who does not want to wake the children. And then the sounds of the building and the street fill in around the silence. Rosa works through the last 4 pieces. The pile on the right empties. The pile on the left is everything she has done today. A record in fabric of a Thursday in December in this apartment. She ties off the last piece and sets the bundle aside. For a few minutes, she does not move. The lamp is low. The front room is dim enough now that the corners have gone dark. The curtain barely visible. The coat on the peg, a shape rather than a thing. The street outside is in its minimum state. This is her 20 minutes. She takes them. She sits with the cooling cup of tea and the low lamp and the room in its nighttime version of itself. Not planning, not calculating, not managing anything. Simply here. The cup is warm in her hands. The room is hers. In a way, it is not hers at any other moment in the day. The 20 minutes when no one needs her to be anything other than a woman sitting at a table. She looks around at the apartment. The tenement took things. This is true, and she has known it since the first winter. It took the space she would have chosen. The room where Miriam could have kept her books without the lamp going out. The corner where Samuel might have learned to be still sometimes, instead of always in motion. The kitchen that was only a kitchen instead of a kitchen, and a laundry and a sick room, and the place where the piecework lives. It took the quiet nights and the clean air and the private conversations and the particular dignity of a room that belongs to one purpose at a time. But she looks at the curtain and thinks about the 4 dried figs in the back of the crate. The ones Miriam does not know about, saved for the day when Miriam needs them. She thinks about the bread she leaves warm under a cloth for Isaac on the mornings he rises before she does. She thinks about Miriam's pencil marks in the margins of the borrowed novel. The private notation system of a 13-year-old who has decided some things are worth returning to. She thinks about Samuel counting the steps to the staircase each evening before hanging his jacket. The small automatic accounting of a boy who learned something in October and has been carrying it quietly ever since. She thinks about Isaac in the dark kitchen, saying an English word over and over to himself after Samuel corrected him at supper. She thinks about Leah sleeping against Miriam's back, with her arm around the rag doll made from a scrap of cloth, sleeping with no knowledge that the room is small. The tenement could not take these things. They were too small and too specific and too carefully held. They lived in the parts of the apartment that no inspector's notebook recorded and no landlord's agent counted. They lived in the language the family spoke when the door was closed. In the 20 minutes of tea before the lamp went out. In the number Rosa has been building for 2 years toward the conversation she has not yet had with Isaac about Miriam and school. Rosa reaches across the table and pinches the lamp. The room goes dark. For a moment, the darkness is complete, and then her eyes begin finding what is there. The faint line of the window, the shape of the curtain, the coat on the peg, the street outside showing a thin brightness against the December sky. She sits in the dark for another minute. Then she gets up and crosses the kitchen and goes into the middle room. She finds the edge of the bed in the dark and gets in beside Isaac, who shifts slightly without waking. The building settles around her, 6 floors of it, all its families in their rooms, all their lamps out, all their suppers finished, all their children at whatever sleep their rooms and the night provide. The shaft in the wall moves its cold air or does not move it. The staircase stands with its 4 steps from their door to the top, 12 down to the 2nd floor, 12 more to the ground. The rent is paid. The bundle is tied. The bread is under its cloth for the morning. Outside, the city in its minimum state, doing what it does while people sleep. Inside, on the 3rd floor of a building on Orchard Street, the Adler family sleeps. Let the room hold you a moment longer. The darkness here is warm in the way a room is warm when the people inside it are breathing. The street below is at its quietest. The lamp is out. The coal is banked. The cloth covers the shaft. Somewhere below you, all the other families in this building are at their ends. Their lamps out, their suppers finished, their children in whatever version of sleep their rooms allow. This is the building at the close of a December Thursday in 1880. All its condition, all its families, all its years of accumulation and its imperfections, and its small dignities and its large insufficiencies. It stands. The people inside it sleep, and the city turns. And the morning is coming, and these 3 rooms will be ready for it. Rosa sleeps. Sweet dreams.